Hello, I'm going to be talking about multiphonics in Mark Engebretsen's Energy Drink 1. So to start off, what is a multiphonic? Basically, it's that sound that everyone has heard resonating through Wellesley at every hour of the day. Yeah, it's when a homophonic instrument produces more than one pitch simultaneously. Technically, they aren't actually happening simultaneously. They're just switching between each other so quickly that our ears think they're happening simultaneously. But if you slowed it down to like, you know, a 1/1000th speed or whatever, you could actually hear it going just really, really fast. Yeah. Brass has been doing it since the 1860s with Carl Maria von Weber's pieces, where they sing a note. Back then, it was usually a nice consonant note, like a fifth or an octave. And then woodwinds started doing it when Berio wrote his first sequenza, the flute sequenza. Is the first kind of big piece for woodwinds to start integrating multiphonics into their repertoire. And then saxophones actually happened even later. It didn't become like a staple technique for us until Edison Denisov's 1970s sonata, which is later than I thought it was going to be, because it's, you know, something we've all been doing since our undergrads, and every piece seems to need it. So, as a history, so what are they? How do we make them? So on saxophone, there's three main ways we can produce upwards of one pitch at a time. The first is we can do what the brass does. We can just use our voice. So if I play my low B flat, I sing a fifth above that, you should hear the two pitches simultaneously, and it creates a nice little auditory illusion where if I do it perfectly, you'll actually hear the octave below the low B flat. I don't know if Zoom picks that up, but we'll find out. So. So that's the first way. We don't do that a lot. That's more of a brass thing. We avoid that because we have a lot of buttons and we like to do something with them, which is the second way that we can make these, which is through precise fingerings and altering our airstream. This is kind of the main way we do them. Now within those, that fingering method, there's a couple of kind of variations of, or classes, I guess, of multiphonics. So the first one is called a bichord, and as it sounds, it's any multiphonic that is only two pitches. Usually these are separated by some flavor of a third, either, you know, a minor, diminished, I don't know what you call a quarter tone third, but any of those. So for instance, that would be a bichord, as it's only made up of and the E quarter flat. Another pitch, or the second grouping of them, I guess, are complex or tremolo multiphonics, which is any multiphonic that has upwards of two pitches, is abrasive, and the underlying thing you hear is the lowest harmonic of the set of notes being sounded, having this kind of like almost flutter-tongued sound to it. So, for instance, so that's Kientzy 1, which is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 B flat, which is every saxophonist's first and favorite multiphonic because it's really easy to do. But the underlying feature of it is that low sounding D chord or flat. And then the third class of multiphonics through fingerings are what this article calls multi-harmonics, which is when you sound so instead of splitting apart and having two separate harmonic series going, you instead have two notes from the same series going. So it's less of a finger thing and more of a voicing thing, and I'm not good at it, I've learned today. So we'll see if I can actually pull one of these off. that came across, but basically what I was doing is I was fingering my low E and overblowing a little bit so that the fundamental and the first overtone were both sounding at the same time, kind of flipping back and forth. And those are actually one of the better ways of telling that these are not actually sounding at the same time, but rather flip-flopping between each other. So how do we break that down a little bit more? So let's go back to the ones that Engelbretson used, which is those tremolo, those fingering multiphonics. So I've got here a piece of paper that has the fingering on it that I can then copy down, even though I do know it. But I don't trust myself to write the notes right. I guess I've done this before. I can't remember. So this multiphonic shows up a lot in the piece. It's made up of B flat, A, A. And then together. So let's look at the physics of this for a second, just to fully understand it. I don't even know if this is visible. I'm going to assume you can see it great. If not, yeah, good luck. So first one, fundamental, A. So A, for those who don't play saxophones, fingered with 1, 2. So that's already in our fingering. If I add the other ones and I'm just blowing an A, it doesn't really change it. Similarly, if I overblow the A to get the octave up A, not too hard. Now, B flat is the third harmonic of the low E flat. So what's happening here is while I'm overblowing this A to get that A, I'm also having the same airstream as it takes to get this E flat up to that B flat. And because the airstream is being kind of sliced in two by this open, the open key, since I'm not pressing 3, what's actually happening is both harmonics are sounding, and then this is kind of underlying underneath the whole thing. So, so I can do all of that without actually having to change fingerings because of how the air is being pushed through the instrument and coming out of 2 separate openings. So now let's look at how Engelbretson uses these techniques within the context of the piece. So a lot of the time, he's using these multiphonics as punctuation points, things that kind of mark an end of a section, a changing of a section. Not always, but usually. So for instance, right on the first page, so he uses the multiphonic there as a transition between the kind of noodly bits into this slap tongue, overtone stuff. Later on, he uses it again to transition between, not even really transition, but as kind of just like a stepping stone between one noodly bit and another right here, and I'm just going to do it right. So he uses that as the transition point, and then later on, he actually kind of uses it as more in this next section called snaky sostenuto, which is where all the quarter tones start to happen. He uses them more as actual kind of melodic content. So, for instance, it works with the phrase, and it doesn't sound as out of place as it normally does. Later on in this section, he actually kind of spins multiphonics into their own melodic line, which is one of the more interesting parts. It stands out from the rest of the piece, and it's also almost right at the halfway point as kind of a marker. So where they've been kind of separate entities up until now they kind of stand together, and you can actually hear how they work as kind of a unit. So he starts introducing this. And then moves on, and then this nice line. Oh, I'm so happy that worked on the first try. So he's got this kind of, this melody made up of multiphonics. Is the vague shape. So moving through the piece more, he kind of stays away from them for the most part until we get up until the last transition piece leading into kind of the finale section where he goes for one. And he has this beautiful moment where he gets the highest harmonic of this multiphonic, which for you saxophones following along at home, 1, 3, 4, 5, C sharp, to kind of come out, since we can isolate pitches within the harmonic, or within the multiphonic. So and that's actually one of the ways that I was told to practice these, was just try to figure out which pitch of each multiphonic is the hardest one to isolate, and then practice and aim for that pitch. And it'll actually help the multiphonic come out a lot easier and a lot more consistently. The last multiphonic used in the piece is the one at the very end. I think I can play it. Which of course is our great friend Kientzy 1, everyone's favorite multiphonic. So in learning how to do this, one of the things I've spent a lot of time on is that section where the multiphonics have to kind of tie together into a somewhat coherent melody. So to practice this, I tried to figure out where the melody notes within the actual multiphonics are. So for that first one, I usually took a higher note. So for instance, that's the shape that I hear. So that's kind of what I try to get across. And then in the second grouping, this one's a bit trickier. I'm kind of aiming for different notes and not just following the top line. So this one, what I hear is the main melody is trying to do there is get the harmonics that I want to have speak louder than others, because that's another kind of bit of control we actually have over these moments, is that we can not only isolate pitches, but we can bring out pitches more than others if we want to and want to figure out how to do the control of that. So for instance, for that Kientzy one, I can have it sound as a low harmonic, or I can make the top note sing a bit more. And it lends itself to this kind of next level of sort of expression that we get to use as performers, as interpreters. I find something that isn't really there with just kind of these the single notes that we get a lot. Because like you can play a B flat that's written at forte in a lot of ways. Don't get me wrong, but like when you get a chord and you can kind of voice it however you want, you can pick the important notes, you can kind of pick your own melody out of it. It's kind of this fun little field trip, and it lets you experiment a lot of, yeah, it lends itself to a lot of thought, which is one of the big things with contemporary music, or so I'm told, is just kind of not just reading exactly what's on the page, but actually thinking about what should be coming off of the page for the audience. And I find that extended techniques like multiphonics lend itself to that really, really well. This piece is chock full of them. I think multiphonics are the main draw of it, although quarter tones are definitely another sack of worms. But really, I find a quarter tone, they're cool, they're hard, but they don't have the same expressive value that I get out of a multiphonic, the same kind of satisfaction of decision making. Because with a quarter tone, you know, you play it and it's right, but you know, you can try to bring out, the quarter tones themselves more, but I don't find like it doesn't feel like I am influencing the sound as much as I am with a multiphonic, where if I do it right, if I do it the way I want, it can sound great. If I mess it up, it'll sound poopy. Because like those isolated pitches are also exactly what you hear when you just flub a multiphonic. So for instance, if I'm going for this one here, what happens a lot with me when I miss it is it's just this A sounds. And in the moment, I usually go, ah, shit, in my head, and don't actually just think it's okay if I just raise my voicing, the rest of it will come out. Yeah, it's a weird dichotomy of cause and effect, where if you mess up a multiphonic, it really is totally, it's on you. It's kind of hard to blame the instrument if you just close the right holes. It's a lot of knowing how it sounds, what you want to come out in the sound, and then how to make it sound that way through doing weird contortionist stuff with your tongue. Yeah. So that's the gist of my multiphonic spiel. I don't know what happens now.